In this exercise, we're going to discuss the 3D View button. The 3D View button is up at the top of the screen, and it's selecting on the little house that says Default 3D View. When you pick on that, it'll take you to the view named 3D from underneath 3D Views. What this means is it will always take you to the view named 3D underneath 3D Views. For instance, if we would double-click up here where we have our floor plans on any of the floor plan levels that are there. When we double-click, it'll bring up a different view. If you come up to the 3D View button and select on it, notice that it's automatically taking us back to that view called 3D. But it always takes us back to the view named 3D. So if we would right-click under the project browser on the words 3D, come up to Rename, and rename this something different. I'm just calling this View 123, and I'm going to click on OK. We can now see that there's a 3D Views, and the view's name is View 123. Now this is the exact same view that 3D Views button was taking us to before. If we would select here inside of the 3D view, come up to the edge of the view cube, and click one of the corners of the view cube, this is going to spin this building, which is halfway through its development process, around on the screen. Also, we can view the 3D view by holding down the Shift key and the wheel at the same time on the mouse, so we can see it from all these different sides. But we're still inside of the View 123 as we do it. And if you come back up to the top and select on the default 3D view, we'll automatically create a new view that's called 3D. That's what it always does, is it will always create a view called 3D, or if you go to another view, in this case I double-clicked on my View 123, it will take you back to the view named 3D when you select on the 3D View button. One other property of it is if you're working in what's called work sets, which means multiple people can be working on the project at the same time. If that's been enabled, then whenever you select on the 3D View button, it will have 3D and then your name after it. What this is indicating is that that's your default 3D view as opposed to other people who's working on the project's default 3D view. 3D views are great for being able to take a look at your model, zoom in and zoom out, and just get a better analysis as to what's been drawn on the screen up to that point. Now, everybody might have different needs. As a result of that, everybody has their own default 3D view link over here on the side so that you can work inside of your own default 3D view without messing up anybody else's work. So the 3D View button is located up here at the top of the screen, looks like a little house, and when you select on it, it'll always take you back to a view named 3D. Elevation tags are used to document the way that the front of your building or the sides and back of your building will look. We can find elevation tags here in our drawing, and they're these rectangles with the triangular shapes that are pointing toward the building. Each of these elevation tags has a corresponding view underneath the project browser, and we can find those underneath Elevations, Building Elevation, and we can see that they have the names East, North, South, and West. The South elevation corresponds to if this was a map, and this is the south side, this would be the north side, this is east, and this is west. Let's double-click on the word South underneath Elevations in the project browser. This is going to open up the South elevation view, and as we can see inside of this view, this is what the front of our building looks like. Normally, once you have a South elevation or North elevation view, you can come in, you can adjust such things as the height associated with each of the levels. Also, you can place dimensions, do notes, and be able to mark this up so that it has the appropriate information so the building can be built. Now let's take a look at Plan View again. So move up here and select on the X in the upper right-hand side of the screen. Once you do that, you'll see the 4 elevation tags again. And I want to point out that if you highlight over one of these elevation tags, the body will highlight and then the little tip of it will highlight. And the reason is that they do 2 separate things. The tip, or the triangular shape, if you select on that, what you're going to see is a single line going across here. You want anything that should show up inside of the elevation to be on this side of this line. In other words, if this line would happen to be crossing over or be behind an object, you wouldn't be able to see it in elevation. Now, let's double click really quickly on the triangular shape. And you'll see that that's another way that you can use the elevation tags to be able to zoom in or be able to go to a specific view that you want to be able to see. Once again, I'm going to come up here into the upper right-hand side and click on the X. Now do the same thing with this elevation tag up here, the north elevation tag. Double click on it really fast. In this case, we're seeing the side of the building. We can see the glass that makes up the different curtain wall assemblies, and we can see the wall here. That's the north side now of our building. Click on the X. Now each of these are exterior elevation tags. They don't necessarily have to be square, but by default in this case they are. I will say though that if you select on the actual rectangular portion, one of the things that you'll see is some extra arrows showing up as well as boxes there. Also, if you select on your properties, we can see this particular one, this is the elevation, building elevation. If you click where this picture is at, you'll notice there's also another option here that says interior elevation. By clicking on that, we can see that the tag will now change to be a circular tag, which in this instance has been set up so it will look like it's an interior elevation tag, which is used to define such things as the way that a bathroom layout might look, or how the cabinets in a kitchen may look. Click one more time here on the type selector list under properties and select on building elevation to bring this back to be a rectangular shape. Now that interior one is the one you're probably going to be a little bit more likely to have the extra arrows associated with it. So let's create a condition like that over here inside of our drawing. In this instance, I'm going to zoom in to one of the bathrooms. It currently has no fixtures placed inside of it, so it's going to look like it's in the inside of a blank room, but that's going to be okay for us for right now. Move up underneath the View tab on the ribbon, then find the elevation tag and select on elevation. Here on the type selector list under properties, change this to be an interior elevation tag. Then move this in here, and I don't care which direction that the arrow is pointing in, just click once it gets to be inside of the space. And then hit escape a couple of times to get out of the command. The next thing I'd like you to do is select on the circle and put a check mark in each of these boxes that show up. And then click out here in space. What we've done is we've now placed an interior elevation and it's looking in all four directions. Now if we would look at one of these three elevations, we wouldn't be able to see much other than just a wall. But this elevation here, which I'll call the south elevation, which is elevation 1-B, we should be able to see a door with it. So if you double click really fast on the arrow there we can see that wall with the door inside of it. So we were able to, on the fly, create an elevation based off of that elevation tag. Also, if we look under the project browser at this point, we'll see that there's a new category associated with interior elevations. And if we expand that out, we can see each of those different views, including elevation 1-B, which is the view that we're currently in. So to place elevation tags, it's a matter of coming underneath the View tab and then selecting on the elevation tag. You will notice that in this case, it shows up as being grayed out. To place an elevation tag, you have to be inside of a plane view to place your elevation tag. So elevation tags are designed to allow you to create either interior or exterior elevations to better document your designs. Section marks are used to cut a section through the walls, floors, ceilings, in general just the different materials that make up your building. In this case, I'm going to take a section, which is underneath the View tab, and Section on the ribbon, through this back half of our building. Right now, the only thing that happens to be drawn are really a series of walls. We currently don't have any floors or ceilings in this building, so this section is only going to show a section going through the walls. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so we can take a look at the section. I'm going to click once, come down, and then click again. This places the section symbol here inside of our floor plan view. I want to mention that there's dashes showing up in here. And the reason is that this here will be the detail or the section number, and this is going to be the page number whenever this view is eventually put onto a page. So when it comes time to do our construction documents, we'll move this section view out onto a page, and these dashes will automatically fill in with the correct information based on the information that it has when it's placed on its sheet. Also, we can see that there's a little double arrow here where the section is at. If we select on the little double arrow, That'll flip it from looking in one direction to looking in the other direction. There's a break mark here. If you select on the break mark, which is gaps and segments, it will allow you to split this line here that makes up the section. This won't affect the way that our section view looks. It's just a documentation tool. Also, if you move your mouse up here and click on that little break mark again, it'll automatically heal that particular section. Another thing of note is in order to be able to see whatever you want to see inside of the section, then this dashed box is going to give you an idea as to what's going to be inside of this section. So what this means is that in this case, we'd be able to see the back wall as well as anything else that would be inside of this particular box. If we wanted to see less of it, you can click on the arrows and then drag the arrows back. Now, because this back wall is no longer inside of this box that shows up, it will no longer show up inside of our section view. I'm going to click out here in space. Next, I'm going to select one more time on this line, zoom out just a touch, and we're going to see that there's two different options and they look the same on both ends. If you click on that, it'll either remove that particular end, it'll give that section bubble on the end, or else it'll give you the nice thick dark line. And you could do the same thing on the other end. These can all be customized inside of the families so that this can have the look that you like to have inside of your own set of construction documents as well. Now let's take a look at this section by just double clicking really fast on the circular part of it. In this case, it's taken us to a building section that has a very low level of detail associated with it. If I zoom in a little bit, we can see that this is just some line work. But there is an option down here that says detail level. And if you change this to a higher level of detail, in this case I did a fine level of detail, you'll be able to see each layer of material that's associated with this particular item, in this case a wall. Now I'm going to move up here, I'm going to click on the X to get out of this particular view. Now let's do a full building section the same way. So come up here to section, underneath the view tab, click once, move over, and click again. Hit escape a couple times on the keyboard. Now, before when we did this, I double clicked here where the circle was to see the view. You could still do that, but I want to point out that underneath the project browser, there's now a sections area. And if you double click where section 2 is at, that'll take you to your full building section where we can see everything that shows up inside of the section. And we could take the time to detail this out if we wanted to change the level of detail so things would appear slightly differently. In this case, let's try changing this to a fine level of detail and see if any changes actually occur. You'll notice that very little has changed, if anything at all. And the reason is that we're cutting through very little except for the mullions and the glass is associated with each of these windows inside of the curtain walls. If these had had more elaborate detail, then changing this to a fine level of detail may have given us more information. So the purpose behind sections is to be able to cut sections through your building so that you can see how different layers of material are put together.